So, rogues are not the only class I've been neglecting a bit when building characters. Today, monks get their turn in the spotlight. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you just want to punch things really hard or be the town drunk, I'm here to help you with everything. So, yes, I'm going to apologize a bit beforehand. Something is going on with my sound, and I've spent the last 40 minutes trying to figure out what. I was able to reduce most of the weird static coming from somewhere, but I'll have to do with this for now. Anyway, if even with slightly shitier sound you still like my videos, there is still a subscribe button in some direction that I'm not pointing at. Do please feel free to click it if you like my content. Now let's get on with the show. So, monks, masters of martial arts and all that. They can punch, kick, catch arrows, run up walls. Pretty amazing stuff, and all you have to give up for it is having a decent armor class. Oh, the horror. Just kidding, really. I've been playing a monk recently, and they are a lot of fun. They don't get magic, but they do get a lot of cool options, though. As per usual, I'll be showcasing 2 builds, and normally I start with the common ground, and the common ground is that both builds are mainly monks. Huzzah! There we are, now on with the show. Let's go to the first build. This first build is going to be a monk that is centered around staying alive for an increased period of time. No, it is not another tank build. I've really stopped myself from making tanks out of every class, but monks do have the defenses of a wet noodle when it comes to armor class, so this monk has received some feats and buffs and what have you to make it better at keeping itself alive without any external help. This might actually allow your healer in the party to blast something. Who knows? And of course, monks do bring Stunning Strike to the table, which is downright amazing and allows you to crowd control some critters on the table, all while still punching the living bejeebus out of people. Let the good times roll, really. The build can be online by level 4 if you're willing to sit on 14 dexterity until level 8, which is doable, but I know we all feel more comfortable having at least 16 dexterity, so it really is up to you. I started playing this character at level 8, so I didn't have to pick. So, armor class is not going to be our shtick. Thankfully, our hit die isn't absolute crap. We'll double down on the HP side of staying alive by making ourselves a hill dwarf. You get that juicy +2 to constitution, which keeps us alive. We will also get +1 wisdom. Wisdom adds to our armor class, and it is vital as it sets our difficulty class for Stunning Strike. So while we're not getting any extra dexterity, our main punching stat and standard AC buffer, we compensate by bringing better crowd control and more hit points, both because of the +2 con and the extra mountain dwarf hit point. Let's never forget those. And our defenses will be pretty equal to other monks because how we invest our point buy, the one exception being Wood Elves. They have the +2 dex and the +1 wisdom, but then again they don't have any constitution buff, so they have higher defenses, lower hit points. Dwarves work just fine. With point buy, our stats will look something like 8 in strength, 14 in dexterity, 17 in constitution, 10 in intelligence, 16 in wisdom, and 8 in charisma. The odd constat matters, but you can move the intelligence score to strength or charisma if that is your preference. Thanks to high constitution and mountain dwarfiness, we start out at 12 hit points. That is very high for a level 1 monk. 15 armor class isn't that great, but it's not a total shambles either. Skills, background and gear, that is all up to you. Monks really don't need anything else but their fists. You can take a d6 weapon at the start to have a little bit of extra damage on your normal attack. It will scale, of course, with your martial die later on. And yes, don't forget that any simple weapon is kind of a finesse weapon for a monk, since they all count as monk weapons. So a monk wielding hand axes is perfectly possible. And also don't forget at level 1, when you attack with a weapon, you can take a bonus action to punch something afterwards. This means you can attack someone with a quarterstaff, technically speaking, using the versatile property to hit for a d8 plus 2 because of our dexterity, and then we can punch someone for a 1d4 plus 2. That is really good stuff at level 1, really. It's strong. I don't think there's a lot of dual-wielding level 1 characters out there who can equal that. The fighter with 2 short swords has d6, d6. We have the 84 plus always a relevant stat, so we're doing pretty great at level 1 when it comes to punching things, and of course the d4 will grow as we level, so that's even better. Now, someone might say, but Sam, if you use the stick with 2 hands, how are you going to punch? It might sound crazy, but I can hold the stick in 1 hand after attacking with it with 2 hands, and then use the open hand to punch an extra hole in the enemy. This, as I've already said, makes you quite a fierce puncher at level 1, completely compensating for our wet paper defenses. Level 2, of course, introduces key points to the monk, which is our bread and butter resource. The more key points we have, the merrier. Which is good, because every short rest or long rest, all of our key points will reset. You always have the amount of key points equal to your monk level, so we get 2 for now. Initially, you can use them to punch more, run fast, run dodgy, and to use dodge as a bonus action. The reason I don't say this in a funny way is because this feature actually interests us. Second level also gives us 10 feet extra movement speed to compensate for our stubby dwarven legs. Level 3 teaches us how to catch and return arrows, which is a very nifty trick indeed. I've had a lot of fun with that feature. It also grants us our subclass. While the main staying alive feature of this monk is not going to come from our subclass, but from general monk features and a feat that we'll pick up, there is one class that synergizes really nicely with what we're doing, and that is the Way of the Drunken Fist. Apart from the fact that it synergizes, I also really like the flavor of this subclass and how it works. It gives me more punchy, more zippy over the battlefield. It's a lot of fun. So just take Drunken Master. For now, it means that we can disengage when we use Flurry of Blows, our key point spender that allows us to make 2 extra unarmed attacks instead of 1. And when we do this, we gain another 10 feet speed. So that's good. Even when you've been running up to an enemy using all of your speed, you can still run away if you use Flurry of Blows, disengage 10 feet backwards and hide behind the closest tank or whatever. It's pretty good, actually. Level 4 is, of course, where it's at. If you want to get the build online right now, have a look at the Dwarven Fortitude feed. First off, it bumps our constitution by 1 all the way up to 18, which is very high, giving us very, very, very respectable hit points at this level. More importantly, though, it allows us to spend a hit die to heal ourselves for the usual value of 1d8 plus your constitution modifier, which is already +4 for us, anytime we use the dodge action. And that includes when we use it as a bonus action by spending a key point. So, apart from having great hit points, we can now punch an enemy, put ourselves in the dodge stance, and then heal up for a nice chunk of our total hit points. We also increase the chance of enemies missing by a fair amount because we are using the dodge action. So that is extra survivability, and it will set us up for our level 6 monk ability. If you prefer more punchiness right now, then of course feel free to grab the extra 2 in dexterity at this level and pick up the feat by level 8. A small word on hit dice maybe, since a lot of one-shot evenings and even longer campaigns don't have more than 2, 3 encounters per day, players rarely burn through their hit dice. So using them here in this build as a self-recovery tool is a great idea, really. Just keep an eye on the fact that you only regain half your hit dice on a long rest. So if that one especially heavy day comes around, keep in mind that you might need more than one long rest to recover all of your used hit dice. Level 5 is straight up simple. Punch more and punch stunnier. You get the extra attack feature, which is always good for martial classes. It gives you 3 attacks on a regular turn and 4 when you use Flurry of Blows. Your martial die also grows to a d6 at level 5, so your punches pack extra punch. Yeah, I went there, I'm sorry. Equally important though, we get access to Stunning Strike. Whenever we hit with an attack, we can spend 1 key point, only 1, and we have 5 right now, to make the target attempt a con save. If they fail, they are stunned until the end of your next turn. That means they don't get to move, and every attack against them gains advantage. That is pretty amazing. The DC is based on your wisdom, so thanks to our mountain dwarf, we have a very good save right now, set at 14. Stunning Strike really is great. If your enemy isn't too beefy, chances are you can lock them down, and since you'll have advantage on your next attacks, chances are big that you'll hit them again with one of your 3 or 4 attacks, and you could attempt to stun them again. You might burn to your key points relatively fast this way, but you can't keep one enemy locked down for an entire combat if the rolls are a little bit in your favor. Those are some really good times for the monk, really. Level 6 gives us more drunken pleasure. Tipsy Sway allows us to jump up from being prone for only 5 feet of movement instead of the usual half your speed, it's super situational, but it is really good in those situations. You already have extra movement as a monk, so if you jump up for 5 feet, you still have more than your regular movement left to run up to something and start punching it into oblivion. More importantly though, when an enemy misses you with a melee attack and there is another enemy within 5 feet of you, you can have the enemy directly hit the other chap behind you, no new attack roll involved. Since we will regularly be dodging attacks, this can be a nice follow-up. It is a bit key intensive at first, using 1 key to get into dodge and then 1 to redirect the attack. You can only do that 3 times per short rest, let's say, for now. It can be worth it though when there's an enemy swinging a big and strong weapon at you, or because you had no attack target and you went into the dodge action with your main action. That's also an option. Then this key point is certainly worth spending to get some damage in there. But this is where the synergy comes from. We run up to an enemy, we punch whatever, we punch in his face, in his nads, pick a place. We use our bonus action to put ourselves in dodge, we heal up some damage that we received, and when we get attacked, we can gently bend that giant greatsword towards another enemy. I love doing that, even if I can only do it a few times per short rest for now. Level 7 for monks, very obvious. Your dexterity saves become even better than they already were. You now completely ignore damage on a successful save and take half on a failed save. And you can also end a charmed or frightened effect with an action, which is really situational, but really good in those situations. Level 8, very obvious here. You pick up whatever you didn't pick up at level 4. It's gonna be the 2 dexterity or the dwarven fortitude feat. And that is our self-sustaining monk done. The high constitution really helps with staying on the battlefield. It ups your hit points and the healing you receive from using those hit die with the dwarven fortitude feat. You can still punch and stun to your heart's content. You're not really sacrificing anything big with this build. You're just compensating for a monk weakness, getting the occasional punch in the face. Frequent dodging, healing, and redirecting attacks works like a charm and are really fun mechanics to work with. So there you have it. For our second build, I wanted to do more than just include one class I tend to overlook. so I included 2. By the way, I'm going to gloss over the general monk features in this build rather quickly. If you require a more thorough explanation, go back to the first build where I explain all of them more detailed. For our race, let's take something that actually helps out our dexterity this time around. I'm sure there are some Wood Elf fans out there, and that's good because they are our race for this build. +2 dexterity and +1 wisdom makes every monk a happy monk. The extra weapon proficiencies we get from the race are nice, but are going to be a bit superfluous later on in the build. Good old point by gave me 8 strength, 16 dex, 14 con, 12 int, 16 wisdom and 8 charisma. As per usual, you can mix around the lower ability scores however you want. I took int for general flavor. It gives us a monk with a bit less hit points than our previous one, but we do have 16 dexterity and a 16 armor class from the get-go. I could possibly advise you to grab a short bow at the equipment screen to give yourself a bit of a range game for this monk. You don't absolutely need a melee weapon right now. Fists are great, but as I said before, having a short sword ups your damage a little bit, but I'm sure you can find some simple sword easily enough once you've punched down your first bad guy. The first levels of this build are very much the same as the other build. Level 1 gives you a nice punchy monk. Level 2 gives key points with the usual mobility options and flurry of blows. And at level 3, we pick our subclass. And that is where the difference begins for this build. We will be picking up the Kensei Monk as our subclass. It allows us to grab 2 of whatever weapon we want as our Kensei weapons, as long as they are not heavy weapons or special weapons. We gain proficiency if we don't already have it. I took the longsword and the longbow, since it kind of fits the elf, but then again, they already get the proficiencies as well. But you get more advantages than just that. They also count as monk weapons for you, so if you would pick a weapon with a smaller weapon damage die, rather, it is going to grow with you, so don't worry about that. If you want to have a rather unusual monk, give your elf a warhammer, squash things with grace and precision and gentle zen powers. Now, what do we get out of our Kensei monk if not the proficiencies? If we have made an unarmed strike as part of our attack action, and we are holding one of our Kensei weapons, we can use the weapon to increase our armor class by 2 until the start of our next turn. Basically, by not using the weapon to hit someone with, you can use it defensively to kind of parry things. We also get Kensei's shot. If you're going to attack with your bow, you can use your bonus action to have the longbow attack deal an extra d4 of damage. It kind of replaces your unarmed strike that you will not be using at range. It does not scale with your martial arts die though, so this will always be a d4. We of course also gain deflect missiles from this level. Level 4 allows us a fair bit of choice. We could of course go to 18 dexterity, which is going to be golden for any monk. Better attack, damage, defenses, huzzah! I might actually advise this instead of a feat, as I tend to do, because our second ability score increase is going to be a long way off, I'm afraid. As much as I love feats, this build might not be the place for it. Level 5, equally important as before, it gives us stunning strike, a larger martial arts die and extra attack. More sword slashes, more arrows being shot, more punching, whatever you see fit. By the way, you can now attack with your sword, then use the extra attack to punch the target, and you will still benefit from the agile parry ability that increases your armor class. So basically, extra attack means a near permanent increase to our armor class by 2. Add the extra dexterity from level 4, and you have a monk who sits on 19 armor class very regularly. That is actually really good for the paper hero that we are. Level 6 is where it gets funky. We're going to pick up a level in Ranger. Ability score wise, this is a very logical multi-class. They both rely on dexterity and wisdom. And thanks to the Kensei monk and our elf proficiencies, whatever, we have the same flexibility between ranged and melee that rangers enjoy. Our first ranger level gives us a favored enemy and a favored terrain. If you've been playing from level 1, you should know what type of campaign you're playing and can pick your terrain and enemy accordingly. If you start at a higher level, talk to your dungeon master and see if he might divulge something to help you out here, make a somewhat relevant choice. Nothing sucks more than selecting Undead and the Underdark and being stuck in a wilderness survival campaign where you only fight pigs in a forest. Level 2 adds more interesting things though. Spellcasting and a fighting style. If you are using your bow a lot, you could take the archery style. No biggie, but since stunning enemies, one of the monk's main features still, requires melee attacks, going for the dueling style actually makes more sense. You don't need to weapon fighting style, your fists got that covered, and you don't wear armor, so bugger off defense. This means that our longsword will go down a weapon die from being used with one hand only instead of two hands, the versatile trait, just like with the staff in the first build, but you will gain 2 damage every time. So the average difference between a d8 and a d10 is like 1 damage. And you actually gain 2 damage from dueling, so it is going to be a +1 damage difference in the end, which is good. We want damage, that's what we're here for. We also get spells. Our main focus here is, no surprise there, Hunter's Mark. The other spell can be whatever you deem worthy, but HM is why we're here. Yes, Hunter's Mark rather needs a bonus action to get set up. You won't get to punch extra things in that round, but your 2 longsword or bow attacks already gain the bonus d6. Do consider if Hunter's Mark is worth setting up on a target. On big boss typey guys, it's going to be absolutely great, but you don't want to spend every fight using your bonus actions to move Hunter's Mark around. You can do a lot with bonus actions already as a monk, so you don't need to stuff that bonus action with even more things when it's not necessary. If you're using your Kensei Shot ability, it obviously stacks with the d6 given out by Hunter's Mark. So now you have a d4 bonus and a d6 on each shot of the bow. That is a nice amount of damage dice to roll for a bow. For melee combat in your first turn, this would mean casting Hunter's Mark with your bonus action, running up to the target and attacking them with your longsword twice, which gives you 1d8 plus 1d6 plus 6 damage 2 times. That's a very nice opener in a fight. If the turn afterwards, this big hulky boss type guy is still alive, you can again do 1d8 plus 1d6 plus 6 twice and then add 1 or 2 melee attacks with your fists. And please don't forget that because of Hunter's Mark, your fists are basically great swords because they hit for 2d6 plus 4 each. So that means 4d6 plus 8 on top of the sword attacks. That is a lot of damage coming out of your monk at that point. Now, seeing as this build is all about rolling a lot of dice to deal a lot of damage, I had a look at the Ranger subclasses to see how we can double down on this concept. You can do this in 2 easy ways. You can go the Hunter subclass or the Gloomstalker subclass. Both have extra damage die mechanics that fit in really well with our monk. I'll do a very short overview of both subclasses. Basically, Gloomstalker, we're not here for the free disguise self or for the dark vision. We're here for the Dread Ambusher feature. First off, it allows us to add wisdom to our initiative, which is good because we have a +3 wisdom modifier on top of our +4 dexterity modifier. +7 on initiative without any feats is good, really good, and only a few other classes can rival this, the Swashbuckler Rogue, for example. Even better, on our first turn, we get an extra attack to damage people with. And if that specific extra attack hits, you can add an extra d8 of damage. If they're far away, use your bow, of course. If you can reach them, whack them with the sword for that sweet, sweet extra dueling damage. Don't forget to glue Hunter's Mark on those big, juicy targets. Your first turn versus a big bad guy could look something like this. You cast Hunter's Mark on the big bad boy. You draw your sword, you approach him with your amazing monk speed, and then you attack for 2d8 plus 1d6 plus 6. You are using the extra die from the attack. You can do that again, because you have 3 attacks now, so the second attack has 1d8 less, still punching for quite a bit. And then the third one will use an unarmed strike, not the sword again, for 2d6 plus 4. Because this means we get our +2 to armor class, which helps in keeping up Hunter's Mark concentration. If all goes according to plan, you've just dished out an average of 65 damage on your first turn, and you can do this pretty much every first turn. If you don't have spell slots anymore, you can just blow a key point on Flurry of Blows to compensate for the damage a bit that way. A lot of things will be really hurt after your first turn. The other option is, of course, that we go Hunter subclass. There's a lot less that we gain. It's very simple. You need to pick one of the Hunter spray features there. And I think the easiest to use is probably your Colossus Slayer Hunter spray thingy. Which means that whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, the creature takes 1d8 damage extra if it's not at maximum hit points. You can only do this once per turn, but it is an extra d8 every turn instead of one extra attack all the way at the start. So for short combat, the Gloomstalker opening burst is going to be amazing, but if you know it's going to be a lengthy bit of combat, the Colossus Slayer extra damage might overtake the Gloomstalker one. Mind you, I did tell you it is on weapon damage, so you can't add the d8 on your fist attacks. Be sure to use it on one of your longsword attacks. After Ranger 3, whichever path you took, I would return to Monk levels. You want more ki, you want more Kensei weapon mechanics at level 6 in Monk. Your Kensei weapons pierce physical immunity. They count as magic weapons for overcoming resistances, basically. And we got what we wanted from being a Ranger. Extra damage. This build, I went to Gloomstalker build online, as you can see, has one hell of an opening volley and can then follow up with a very steady flow of damage and stunning things without neglecting its defenses too much. What more could you want? And there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I've pulled the Monk and even the Ranger a little bit from the shadows of obscurity and put them in the spotlight in my build videos. And if you loved that, I have some great news. We will see each other again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.